At the end of December 2024 in Kawasaki City, a 20-year-old girl suddenly vanished without a trace. The case was initially considered routine, perhaps just a young woman leaving home due to family conflicts. But the deeper investigators dug, the more horrifying the truth became. Behind this disappearance lay a dark story of ignored pleas for help, missed opportunities, and a system that failed to protect those who needed protection most. On the evening of December 20th, 2024, amid the bustling atmosphere of a bar in Kawasaki District, Kawasaki City, Japan, Ayaka Okazaki, a 20-year-old woman, was still working diligently. As the year-end approached, the number of customers visiting the establishment grew larger each day. Under the warm yellow lights, with cheerful conversations and the clinking of glasses, Ayaka skillfully moved between tables, serving customers with a smile always present on her lips. This bar was opened and managed by Ayaka's grandmother. Ayaka wasn't merely a helper, but seemed to have become part of the establishment's soul. She was always enthusiastic, hardworking, and beloved by everyone, from regular customers to staff, for her quick wit, attentiveness, and gentle, friendly communication style. Recognizing her granddaughter's capabilities, Ayaka's grandmother gradually entrusted her with many important responsibilities, including tasks related to managing the bar's operations. Around nearly midnight, after completing her duties, Ayaka sent a brief message to her grandmother. She said she would go out for a bit and would return immediately. No one knew where she was going. That was the last time her family heard from her. When the night grew later and Ayaka still hadn't returned, her grandmother began to worry. She called and texted continuously but received no response. An uneasy feeling prompted her to immediately go to the bar to search, hoping her granddaughter was still somewhere around the establishment. But when she arrived, all the staff confirmed Ayaka had left and hadn't returned since. No one knew where she had gone, and there were no unusual signs at that time. Initially, Ayaka's grandmother thought her granddaughter might be in a bad mood and had gone somewhere to clear her head. However, the next day, she texted Ayaka again, but still received no response. She continued texting Ayaka, once, then again, but still got no reply. Another day passed in hopeless silence. At this point, the unease within her was no longer a vague feeling, but gradually transformed into distinct fear. She immediately called Ayaka's closest friends, hoping someone had seen or talked with her. But everyone shook their heads. No one had seen her or been able to contact her since that day. The feeling of unease within her grandmother grew stronger. When she returned home, she discovered a hole in the glass as if it had been forcefully struck. This incident immediately made her suspect that someone had intentionally broken the window and broken into the house. The thought made her shudder. Could something terrible have happened to Ayaka? Unable to delay any longer, she immediately called the police. Upon receiving the report, police quickly arrived at Ayaka's house to assess the situation. Her grandmother couldn't hide her worry and immediately expressed suspicion that her granddaughter might have been kidnapped. The person she believed was directly involved in this disappearance was Ayaka's ex-boyfriend, a 27-year-old man named Hideyuki Shidai. According to the grandmother's account, Shidai had long displayed abnormal behavior and had unhealthy attitudes toward Ayaka. Everything began at the start of 2024, when a group of young men working in construction visited the grandmother's bar. Among them, Shidai stood out with his neat appearance, fashionable clothing, and humorous, natural way of speaking. It didn't take long for him to quickly capture Ayaka's attention. Before leaving the bar, the two exchanged phone numbers. From then on, Shidai frequently visited the bar like a regular customer. Strangely, he always chose the exact times when Ayaka was working, as if he had been monitoring her schedule. Each time he came, Shidai brought small gifts, showing sweet, calculated attention that gradually drew Ayaka into his care. Their relationship quickly progressed. Soon after, the two officially became a couple. Initially, Ayaka kept her romantic relationship secret, not sharing anything with her family. It wasn't until one day that her grandmother accidentally discovered several strange bruises on her granddaughter's face. Worried and suspicious, she questioned Ayaka and finally learned the truth. she was dating a man named Shidai. However, this relationship quickly revealed many toxic signs. Shidai was extremely possessive, always wanting to control his girlfriend down to the smallest details. He didn't allow Ayaka to interact with any other men. Even casual dining with friends or receiving a call from a stranger would result in his interrogation. Not stopping there, he regularly secretly checked her phone, examining every message and conversation. Just seeing Ayaka texting with someone of the opposite sex would make him furious, shouting angrily, then quickly turning his jealousy into painful blows inflicted on the young woman. Shidai had an unstable and violent psychology. After each beating, he would appear remorseful, crying and apologizing, promising to change. In moments of weakness, Ayaka would choose to forgive. But then everything would repeat, even getting worse. After sweet words and affectionate gestures, he would return to his brutal nature. When learning that her granddaughter had been beaten by her boyfriend, Ayaka's grandmother couldn't hide her outrage. Love and worry surged, prompting her to immediately demand that Ayaka end her relationship with Shidai. Initially, Ayaka hesitated, perhaps still attached or not yet decisive about his sweet promises. But finally, under pressure from her grandmother and fear within herself, she agreed to end the violent relationship. Not stopping there, Ayaka's grandmother, fearing her granddaughter would continue to be harmed, decided to tell the entire story to Ayaka's father, Mr. Taku. Upon hearing this, he erupted in anger. Unable to accept his daughter being abused, he immediately went with a friend to the construction company where Shidai worked to confront him. There, he directly criticized Shidai for his brutal behavior and demanded he immediately stop all harassment of his daughter or face consequences. After that confrontation, Shidai indeed disappeared from Ayaka's life for a while. The young woman gradually regained her balance, and the family temporarily breathed easier, thinking everything was over. But that peace only lasted a short time. Due to poor work performance, Shidai was fired by the company. With nowhere to live, he was forced to leave the dormitory and move back to live with his mother in an old house in Kawasaki district, near Daishi Station. Ironically, that house was only a short distance from Ayaka's residence. After losing his job, Shidai not only didn't give up, but began planning to approach Ayaka again. He frequently appeared near the bar where she worked, or secretly followed her on familiar streets she would take after her shifts. With a pitiful expression and persuasive pleading words, he continuously begged Ayaka to return, promising to change and truly love her. That persistent determination, combined with sweet words, gradually moved Ayaka's soft heart. Despite knowing clearly that the past hadn't been good, she once again forgave him. They reconciled, and this time, Ayaka even moved in to live together in the old house where Shidai was staying with his mother. But living together quickly proved that Shidai's promises were lies. His true face once again emerged. The pathological need for control, extreme jealousy, and violent behavior returned as if they had never disappeared. Ayaka continued to be a victim of beatings and suffocating oppression. Unable to endure any longer, she decided to break up again. However, like every time, Shidai appeared remorseful, kneeling and apologizing, blaming himself, crying and begging her not to abandon him. Ayaka's soft heart was once again moved, and she forgave him again. Their relationship continued to drag on in a toxic cycle, where violence, control, and tears repeated endlessly. However, not long before her disappearance, Ayaka made a more resolute decision than ever. She returned home, declaring she would completely end her relationship with Shidai. But the man wouldn't easily let go. He continuously called to harass her, persistently texted, and even regularly loitered near Ayaka's house and the bar. This close, persistent stalking left Ayaka exhausted both physically and mentally. The pressure weighed so heavily that she could no longer concentrate on work, always in a state of anxiety. On the day the incident occurred, after texting her grandmother that she would go out for a bit, Ayaka completely disappeared. From that moment, no one saw her again. Ayaka's grandmother immediately thought of Hideyuki Shidai. Her intuition told her that he, the man with unstable psychology and a history of violence, might be the cause of this mysterious disappearance. Police were quickly called to examine the scene. When checking the house, they found the window was still locked from the inside. The broken glass was said to have cracked from the inside out. With this preliminary assessment, they believed someone inside the house had accidentally broken the glass. Ayaka's grandmother completely disagreed with this conclusion, because the intuition of someone who had lived for years with her granddaughter told her this wasn't an accident. However, police seemed to place little importance on the case. They quickly concluded that Ayaka might have voluntarily left home due to family conflicts or personal psychological reasons. The examination was conducted superficially, with no fingerprinting on the window glass, nor any attempt to track down or summon Shaddai for investigation, despite him clearly being the most suspicious person. This indifferent attitude infuriated Ayaka's father. Returning to examine the scene himself, he discovered 2 bricks stacked on top of each other outside the wall near the window, with clear shoe prints still visible. Additionally, a faint fingerprint appeared on the door handle. All these details were evidence suggesting someone had broken in from outside. He immediately reported this discovery to police. But disappointingly, the response was only indifference. They maintained their assessment that the possibility of glass breaking from inside cannot be ruled out, and took no further investigative action. 3 days after Ayaka disappeared, her grandmother unexpectedly received a text message from her granddaughter's phone number. The content was brief. Ayaka said she felt a bit tired and would contact them later. But contrary to the reassurance the message might bring, the grandmother's intuition became even more uneasy. She insisted to police that the message wasn't written by Ayaka. She believed her granddaughter was being controlled by Shaddai, and that he was the one sending the message, trying to hide Ayaka's true whereabouts. However, police attitudes remained unchanged. They continued to underestimate the case because they had previously received reports related to this couple. About 6 months earlier, Ayaka had called police in a state of panic. She said there had been an argument with her boyfriend and she feared she would be attacked, so she pleaded for intervention from authorities. After receiving the report, police immediately went to both their residences and brought them to the station for questioning. Here, Ayaka recounted the entire story. That day, she had finished work later than usual. Just because of this, Shaddai had an unfounded jealous fit, questioning whether she was secretly dating someone else. The argument quickly escalated, and fearing her boyfriend would become violent, Ayaka was forced to call police for help. She clearly stated she wanted to break up, but was also afraid of retaliation if she did so. She only hoped to receive protection and support from authorities. But unfortunately, nothing came of it. On Shaddai's side, he only told police it was just a normal argument between lovers. He insisted he never laid a hand on Ayaka, just temporarily lost his composure, and spoke harshly. To reassure police, Shaddai even promised to better control his emotions in the future. Since authorities found no clear signs of violence at the scene at that time, they decided not to investigate further. However, to ensure Ayaka's safety, police took her home. About a month later, police proactively called back to check the situation. Over the phone, Ayaka reported that she and Shaddai had officially broken up. She said he had returned all belongings and insisted everything was over. With this information, police believed the danger had been eliminated and officially closed the case, not continuing to monitor further. However, 2 months later, Mr. Taku once again called police. He reported that his daughter had just been attacked and showed signs of injury. Immediately, police were dispatched to meet Ayaka. Here, the young woman recounted a terrible story. The afternoon before the disappearance incident, on her way home from the bar, Ayaka had been followed by Shaddai. When they reached a deserted stretch of road, he suddenly rushed to attack her. Unable to react in time, Ayaka was pushed to the ground. In a state of panic, she only heard terrifying threats coming from the mouth of the man she once loved. After a while, she was able to struggle to her feet and drag herself home with a body full of pain and a collapsed spirit. In fact, since their breakup, the young woman had been stalked, monitored, and threatened by him many times, making her daily life more tense and burdensome than ever. After receiving the report, police summoned Shaddai for questioning. At the station, he adamantly denied the assault. Instead, he said Ayaka wanted to break up over trivial matters and even wanted to put him in prison. He testified that he still loved her and only wanted to reconcile, but she was too cold and let her family interfere, making him feel humiliated. Therefore, he became angry and intended revenge. These statements made police unable to take the matter lightly. They determined that Shidai's behavior constituted signs of assault and harassment crimes. An official investigation file was opened. To protect Ayaka, authorities also quickly processed a restraining order, forcing Shidai to keep his distance and not be allowed to approach Ayaka anymore. It seemed like this time he would have to face the law and be appropriately punished. But things took a different direction. On October 29th, an unexpected event occurred. Ayaka personally went to the police station and reported that all previous accusations about being threatened or assaulted by her ex-boyfriend were due to her exaggerating the situation. According to her, Shidai never threatened her. It was just because she was too frightened and stressed that she hastily called police. Now that she had calmly thought it over, she felt remorseful for letting things go too far. Ayaka also said she was the one who proactively contacted Shidai to apologize, and both admitted they had acted too hastily. They had loved each other and shared many memories, and when anger passed, old feelings resurfaced. Ayaka reported that both didn't want a few arguments to force them to face each other in court. Therefore, after careful consideration, they decided to get back together. For this reason, she came to the police station to request cancellation of legal proceedings and hoped authorities would not continue pursuing the matter. Faced with Ayaka's voluntary attitude and somewhat convincing explanation, police temporarily accepted the conclusion that both parties had reconciled. The case file was therefore closed, but no one expected that just one day later, everything would take a serious turn. Ayaka's younger brother Kotaro frantically called police, reporting that Shidai had suddenly broken into their house and forcibly taken his sister away. According to him, Ayaka didn't voluntarily go to the police station as she had said, but was completely threatened and coerced by Shidai. Immediately after receiving the report, police contacted Ayaka to verify the incident. Over the phone, she confirmed she had been forced by Shidai to go to the Tama River. There, he coldly threatened her that if she dared report to police one more time, he wouldn't hesitate to throw her into the river. However, not long after, Ayaka suddenly changed her statement again. She proactively called police back and said nothing serious had happened. She had voluntarily gone with Shidai, they had simply taken a walk by the river, and there had been no conflicts or altercations between them. The sudden change in testimony left police unable to determine the truth. But less than a week later, on November 5th, Ayaka once again called police, this time with a more determined attitude. She insisted she had just been attacked by Shidai and that they had never made up as previously stated. The gentle statements before, she revealed, were all due to his coercion. If she didn't follow his orders, her family would be in danger. 5 days later, the situation continued to escalate. Mr. Taku called police reporting that his daughter had mysteriously disappeared. He believed she was with Shidai and expressed extreme concern for his daughter's safety. Faced with urgent requests from the family, police went to Shidai's residence to check the situation. There, they found Ayaka was indeed with him. However, what surprised them was that she didn't appear frightened or show any signs of being coerced. On the contrary, her expression and attitude were quite calm, as if everything was fine. Based on this appearance, police assumed the young woman had truly voluntarily returned to her ex-boyfriend and took no further action. On November 22nd, Mr. Taku again reported to police, saying his daughter was at Shidai's house. He suspected his daughter wasn't acting voluntarily. Certainly Shidai had used some threatening tactics to make his daughter behave this way. These consecutive reports made police gradually lose patience. They believed Ayaka wasn't being threatened at all. Everything was voluntary on her part. On December 9th, Ayaka called police twice, saying Shidai was loitering near her house again, making her very frightened and unsure what to do. Police asked her to come to the station to file a report, but she refused. When police inquired further, Ayaka only said indifferently to wait until later or that it was fine now, then immediately hung up. One day later in the early morning, Ayaka called police again, saying her bicycle had been stolen and she suspected Shaddai had stolen it, wondering if she should go to his house to demand it back. Concerned for her safety, police prevented this action and asked her to come to the police station to clearly explain the situation, but she again refused and hung up. 2 days later, police received another report. Ayaka said she saw a suspicious person loitering near her house. This person wore a hood, acted strangely, and seemed to keep staring up at the second floor. Although his face was covered, she could still recognize it was Shaddai from his build. This made her feel uneasy. Police patrolled the area near Ayaka's house, but found no suspicious individuals. A few days later, Ayaka continued calling police until December 20th, 2 days before she disappeared. Mr. Taku reported that since his daughter disappeared, Shaddai no longer appeared near his house. His intuition told him that Shaddai was definitely connected to this incident. Time quietly passed in anxiety and despair. By January 6th, 2025, it had been more than 2 weeks since Ayaka disappeared. The entire family fell into a state of mental crisis. Each passing day felt like torture to them. Ayaka's grandmother could barely eat or sleep, just sitting silently in front of the house from early morning until late at night, her eyes always looking out at the street, hoping her granddaughter would suddenly return. Witnessing this heartbreaking scene, Ayaka's younger brother Kotaro couldn't sit still any longer. He decided to take action. Not waiting for police, nor continuing to rely on help from adults, Kotaro and a few close friends formed their own group and began searching for his sister. Late that night, they went to Shaddai's house, where Kotaro had a strong intuition that his sister might be imprisoned. The group of young people stopped in front of the door, knocking gently first to test. No response. Feeling increasingly uneasy, Kotaro began banging on the door harder, calling out Shaddai's name loudly while banging. When looking up at the second-floor window frame, he briefly saw a light flickering. His instinct told him Shaddai was hiding inside, silently watching without daring to show himself. Emotions surging, Kotaro couldn't control himself anymore. He shouted loudly, intending to rush into the house to force the suspect to face them. Seeing this, the friends accompanying him also became fired up with indignation, working together to try to break down the door. However, inside the house, Shaddai's mother, who had been sleeping soundly, was awakened by the noise. When she looked out the window and saw a group of young men trying to break into her house, she panicked and immediately called police. Soon after, law enforcement arrived. In an instant, Kotaro's group was subdued by police. As the new year approached, the atmosphere in Ayaka's house became increasingly gloomy and heavy. Mr. Taku realized that relying solely on the family's strength wasn't enough. He had to find a way to get help. Through acquaintance referrals, he paid a large sum of money to hire a private detective to begin investigating Shaddai. At the same time, Mr. Taku also posted pleas for help online, hoping the online community could provide clues. He wrote, "As long as my daughter is alive, I just want to know if she's safe. If there are any clues, please contact me." News of Ayaka's disappearance quickly spread and attracted the attention of internet users. People actively shared information and offered many suggestions and advice. By February 2025, after many weeks of silent investigation efforts, the private detective finally brought back a ray of hope. He reported to Mr. Taku that he had traced Hideyuki Shaddai, the prime suspect in Ayaka's disappearance. Through surveillance, the detective said Shaddai's mobile phone might contain important information directly related to the case. If they could obtain that phone, they would have the ability to trace clues to solve the truth. Not wanting to delay further, Mr. Taku and his son decided to take action themselves. They went to the area where the detective said Shaddai frequently visited, secretly lying in wait. When he appeared, father and son immediately rushed forward, blocked him in the street, and demanded he hand over his phone. Caught off guard, Shaddai fought back fiercely. A scuffle quickly broke out between the three. But thanks to determination and prior preparation, Mr. Taku and his son managed to subdue him. While Shidai was still recovering, Mr. Taku immediately grabbed the phone and quickly backed up all message content, especially conversations between Shidai and his mother. After completing this, father and son immediately left the scene before things became troublesome. Their decisive action stemmed from a major suspicion that not only Shidai himself but his mother might also be involved in the incident. She might have known about it and even aided her son in hiding Ayaka's whereabouts all this time. Sure enough, as predicted, after backing up and checking all message content in Shidai's phone, Mr. Taku and his son discovered a series of suspicious conversations between him and his mother. Among them was one notable exchange. "They know you're hiding at home, so plan to go really far." "Where to go? When? What about accommodation? Do you need to come home once, or should mother be there? Going to America would be good, but don't have a passport yet. He also appeared at the apartment and seemed to be watching you. Are you planning to stay in the apartment? No? You're not sure either." These lines were like alarm bells. Clearly, the mother not only knew her son was involved in something dark, but was actively helping him find ways to escape. The way she mentioned going to America would be good, or don't have a passport yet, showed this wasn't just normal conversation between mother and son, but calculated collusion to flee from the law. This discovery made Mr. Taku feel like he was sitting on fire. He feared the worst had happened to his daughter, and if that were true, then Shidai, the prime suspect, was on the verge of fleeing far away with significant assistance from his own mother. Not stopping there, they also discovered Shidai had installed surveillance cameras right in front of his house. His proactive camera installation clearly showed he was monitoring all activities outside, preparing for anyone who might come to inquire or arrest him. Unable to wait any longer, Mr. Taku brought the phone containing the message exchange between Shidai and his mother straight to the police station. In a state of worry and anger, he reported that this conversation was clear evidence that his daughter's mysterious disappearance was directly related to Shidai. He also emphasized that Shidai was planning to flee Japan, with the destination possibly being America, exactly as the message exchange revealed. Therefore, he requested police immediately conduct an investigation and implement an exit ban on the suspect. However, contrary to his expectations, the police response was extremely indifferent. They believed the conversation, while somewhat suspicious, still lacked persuasive power for criminal prosecution. They insisted that without concrete evidence of criminal behavior or direct connection to Ayaka's disappearance, they couldn't act hastily. With procedural reasons and lack of legal basis, they refused to accept the request. This left Mr. Taku extremely disappointed. 2 months later, the private detective discovered another new clue. The bicycle that Ayaka had reported stolen earlier reappeared near Shidai's house. Hearing this news, Mr. Taku immediately went to check. Indeed, the bicycle was his daughter's, completely undamaged. In the bike basket was Ayaka's wallet, containing the bike keys. At this point, Mr. Taku couldn't endure any longer. Clearly, all evidence pointed to Shidai, but police still refused to prosecute the case. This made him extremely furious. He went back to the police station, adamantly demanding they take fingerprints from the bicycle. Faced with Mr. Taku's persistence, police took fingerprint samples from the bike. The results matched Shidai's fingerprints. Just as police were preparing to summon Shidai for questioning, his mother unexpectedly came forward to report. With a worried expression, she said her son had disappeared 2 days earlier, leaving no messages and unable to be contacted by phone. The family had no idea where he had gone or where he currently was. This sudden disappearance made everyone suspicious. Could this be a calculated escape act? For Mr. Taku, this information was like cold water poured directly on his last hope. He had repeatedly warned that Shidai intended to flee, even providing evidence through phone conversations. But instead of listening and acting promptly, police chose to ignore it. Now, when the prime suspect had officially disappeared, not only Ayaka's family, but public opinion began expressing outrage. Information about Ayaka's mysterious disappearance, along with the delayed, irresponsible attitude from police, quickly spread powerfully on social media. On forums and posts, waves of criticism directed at authorities grew fiercer daily. Many questioned the competence and professional ethics of the investigation team. Many internet users called for reopening the entire case file, investigating to the end, and holding those involved accountable. Many also expressed deep sympathy for the victim's family, believing that arresting Shaddai was not only a legal obligation, but necessary to ease the pain of loved ones waiting in anguish. Under growing pressure from public opinion, finally, in April 2025, 4 months after Ayaka disappeared, police officially prosecuted the case. While this was a long-awaited step forward for the young woman's family, it marked a period that was too long and painful. And when the terrible news arrived, the last hope in their hearts was extinguished. Police finally conducted a search warrant at Shaddai's house. The house was a 2-story independent unit, quietly located in a not-too-crowded residential area in Kawasaki district. Law enforcement began thoroughly searching every nook and cranny of the house. However, everything seemed strangely clean. No unusual signs were found. Investigators were nearly ready to end the inspection without results. But just as they were about to leave the scene, an observant officer noticed something unusual inside a wardrobe in the second-floor bedroom. In a hidden corner, the wood panel behind the wardrobe appeared loose, as if someone had deliberately removed and reinstalled it. When they opened this covering, they discovered a small space carefully concealed, almost impossible to notice without careful observation. Inside this secret compartment was a large travel bag. The bag looked old, but was tightly locked. When opened, police were immediately shocked by the scene inside. It was a severely decomposed corpse. Law enforcement immediately sealed the scene and transferred evidence samples to the forensic department. Just a few days later, official results were announced. The body was indeed that of Ayaka Okazaki, the young woman who had been missing for months in her family's unbearable pain and the investigation force's helplessness. The forensic report also confirmed the time of death was approximately 1 month before the body's discovery. However, due to severe decomposition, experts couldn't determine the exact cause of death. When information about Ayaka's body being found inside Shaddai's house was announced, the entire neighborhood where he had lived immediately fell into a state of total panic. Local residents now had to face the horrifying truth that a terrible murder had occurred right next to them, silently and cruelly without anyone knowing. Some neighbors later recalled suspicious details that had occurred before. Some said they had heard cries for help at night, weak, intermittent sounds like desperate pleas coming from Shaddai's house. However, at the time, no one paid much attention. They thought it was just everyday arguing or simply sounds from TV or someone drinking and making noise. Now, with the truth exposed, those sounds became haunting memories. Many felt remorse and unease for not being alert, not responding in time, and perhaps for inadvertently allowing a young life to suffer in isolation. While the neighborhood was still reeling from shock, at Ayaka's house, an atmosphere of mourning enveloped everything. When receiving notification from police about finding their daughter's body, the family completely collapsed. Media outlets quickly reported on this incident. It was learned that from December 9th to December 20th, 2024, Ayaka had called police a total of 9 times. The longest call lasted 20 minutes, but all were ignored by police. This showed their serious irresponsibility. Public outrage erupted violently. Many criticized police for having multiple opportunities to save Ayaka, but treating it as merely ordinary romantic disputes, causing the situation to become so serious it couldn't be salvaged, destroying public trust. After the case was exposed, police accelerated the process of pursuing Shaddai. According to immigration records, he had left Japan and gone to America. However, 3 days after Ayaka's body was discovered, Shaddai returned to Japan and was arrested by police at Haneda Airport. There are reports that after being arrested, Shaddai confessed to his crimes and was ready to accept all punishment. However, the case is still under investigation, with many suspicious points yet to be clarified. For example, where did Shaddai commit the crime? Where did he dispose of the body? Whether his mother was involved? The truth still needs time to be revealed, and that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along and see you in the next videos.